Hi there. Today is April 8th, 2015, and I have a special announcement. You've heard me talk on the podcast with other Etsy sellers about how important product photography is to successful selling on Etsy. And so what I did was I reached out to Craftsy, that's spelled Craftsy. And if you don't know what or who Craftsy is, it's an online website with a repository of crafting classes that you can take online. And they're all taught by video, and you get PDF downloads and everything. With the courses, you also get to interact with the teachers who teach them, and these are all experts in their crafts. And basically, you can learn a new craft or improve your crafting skills if you want to. And so, say you want to learn, start a new product line, and you want to learn a new type of technique. Craftsy is a place you can go to and see if there are any courses that you can take, and then pay for them and learn it. So I personally contacted Craftsy and spoke with Melissa. She works at Craftsy, to get a deal on one of their courses. And I only picked one just because everyone's craft on Etsy is different, and I wanted something that most people would get the most benefit from. And I picked a product photography course. It's called Shoot It. It's basically teaches you how to shoot your products to sell online, and I think it's just the perfect class for every Etsy seller, almost all Etsy sellers, really. And it's taught by Kara Sheridan, and it's been taken by over 5,000 people. It has 4 out of 5 stars positive reviews. So I think it will be helpful for you to, if you want a primer on product photography, or you want to learn some new techniques, or there are things that you don't know that you think might be helpful to you, this would be a good course to take. It usually runs at $39.99, and I think if you go to the Craftsy website, it's craftsy.com, it's on sale right now for $19.99. This particular course is one of the higher end ones. $39.99 is like one of the higher end prices for their courses. But like I said, I contacted Melissa and was able to get a discount for you who listen to the Etsy Conversations podcast. And the discount will give you a 63% off the actual price. So instead of $39.99 or $19.99, you can get the course for $14.99. But there are 2 caveats. One, it's only good for 7 days from today. So after April 15th of 2015, the discount will no longer apply. And but the good thing is, once you purchase it, this or any other Craftsy course, if you don't have time to take it immediately, you can watch it and take it when you have time. Once you purchase a course on Craftsy, it's yours forever. You always have access to it. So if you don't think it's something you can get to now, but you think it's something you might want to get to sometime down the road, you can go ahead and purchase it now. But you have to use this particular link I'm going to give you, because this discount is only for Etsy Conversations podcast listeners. If you go to the website directly, you won't be able to get this particular discount. And the link is convome.com/photos. That's PHOTOS. Convome.com/photos. If you don't remember the link, you can go to convome.com, look at this week's episode, which is On the Round with the fabulous Rachel, and you will see a link to that you can click on that will take you directly to Craftsy, and it has the link, this URL that I'm giving you. Again, that if you want to type it in directly, just type in convome.com/photos. This is an affiliate link, and that's because I do have an affiliate relationship with Craftsy. So that's how I was able to get this special deal. Again, it's only good till the 15th. If you think that it will be of benefit to you, go ahead and use it. Use this link and get that discount. And let me know what you think about the course. Other Etsy sellers have taken it. You can read the reviews on the web page. Other Etsy sellers who have taken it found it very useful. And that's it.
Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I'm very excited to have with me Rachel. Rachel runs the Etsy shop On the Round, and her shop has been open since January of 2008. To date, Rachel has made 2,180 sales. She has 1,215 five-star reviews and 3,766 admirers. So Rachel is with me this week. We're going to be talking all about what she's doing on Etsy and craft shows. We're going to go a lot deeper into craft shows than we've gone before. And we have a third guest who's Rachel's new baby boy. And so he's going to be with us on the podcast. So please welcome Rachel and her new baby boy. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Thanks for being my guest on the podcast.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of your podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. So Rachel, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I am a Mainer. That is a big part of who I am. My shop is called On the Round. I'm a fiber artist and a mom, and on Etsy I sell artesian yarn, hand-spun yarn, hand-dyed yarn, and fiber for spinning and felting.
Do you make the fiber?
I don't make a fiber. I don't have animals.
Okay.
We live in a very small house with only 0.3 acres, so we don't have any sheep. I source a lot of my wool from local farms. We have a lot of great wool sources here in Maine, okay. And I also work with mini mills and big mills all over the country. So there's a lot of great wool to be had in this country, and I like to kind of dip into all of it.
Nice. Now, how did you get into dyeing wool and yarn?
Well, I've been knitting since I was about 7 years old. My Nana taught me. And then I got really serious about it in college. And I used to just kind of drag my knitting around with me everywhere, in classes and at bars and at concerts.
At bars?
Yeah. Yeah. I like to listen to jam bands a lot, and I used to always bring my knitting with me. And so I went to the University of Maine, and I was getting a degree in art education. And when I was coming close to the point where you have to start doing your student teaching, I started kind of like getting hives about being a teacher and really didn't want to do that at all.
Oh, yeah.
I was kind of just like thinking, I really just want to knit for a living.
Wow.
So I made an appointment with my advisor, and I told her that, and it just really worked out that she had a friend who was a fiber artist who lived right in Orono, which is the town that the University of Maine is in. And she just picked up the phone and called her friend and said, I have somebody that would like to work with you. So I started doing an internship with Jody Clayton at One Loop and Fiber Art. And that's where it all started for me. She made Nuno felt scarves, and she dyed all her wool. And I just started cranking out Nuno felt scarves for her business, and just really became very hooked at that point.
What are Nuno felt scarves?
Nuno felt scarves, when you take the wool and you felt it, which felt is, you make a fiber from, a textile from the wool. Okay. It's like when all the wool fibers get tangled up and become like a dense, hard fabric.
Oh, right. Okay.
So Nuno felting is when you take the wool and you actually felt it through silk.
Oh.
So you make these like beautiful designs on silk scarves and wraps, and It's basically you're making a textile.
Okay. And is it all done by hand? So you use your hands to create this new textile, or do you use some type of a loom or something?
No, it's pretty much done by hand. It's water, soap, and friction is what makes felt.
Okay.
And there are some tools you can use to make it easier to help with the agitation process. You can use the washer or the dryer and things like that when you're doing it on a bigger production scale, but it's very much hands-on. Okay. I made, each scarf one at a time.
Wow.
Yes, it was great.
So let's talk about when you were in college and you decided you wanted to knit for a living. When you thought about it, what did that look like to you? Just the thought
I didn't know, and I think that's why it felt so kind of like silly, because it was like, how do you knit for a living? I mean, it's just crazy. This was quite a while ago, and it was really before, knitting's really big now, and there's Ravelry, and there's so many people that make a living as designers and things like that. But back then, that didn't really happen. So it was kind of, I really thought I was going to get laughed out of my advisor's office. I didn't even know about felting when she called her friend. It just worked out really well. It was one of those moments where my gut was like, just say it. Just say that's what you want to do. Yeah. And I did. And it, led me down the path that I'm on now. And it was a really, really great decision at the time. Right. But no, I had no idea where that was going to go. And I don't knit for a living. I mean, I still knit for hobby, but.
Right. But you're closer to doing what you enjoy.
I mean, well, once I got here, it was like, well, I don't really want to knit for a living, because that's mine, and it's my hobby, and it's my love, and it's
you didn't want to taint that.
Yeah. So I still keep that as my special thing, but just working at One Lupin was so eye-opening for me because Jody was just a one-woman show, and she had a sustainable business, making things, and that was I think where my ideas changed. It was like I knew I wanted to work with wool, I know I want to make things, and I know this is what I want to do, for my living. So that was a really, really big opportunity for me.
That is so wonderful to hear.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah. Now, you have been selling on Etsy since January of 2008, which means you're probably one of the earlier adopters, one of the earlier people to come on.
Yeah, Etsy was pretty new when I jumped on there.
Now, at the time, were you, because by then, eBay, I believe, had already had a foothold. Did you have any concerns about selling on Etsy and whether or not it would be worth your time and effort, or did you really believe in Etsy?
I really believed in Etsy. I mean, I had a friend, Jan, who, she did some sewing for One Lupin, cause this was when I was working at One Lupin when I joined Etsy. And she just kept telling me about it, encouraging me to start something on my own. And so it was a really exciting step. And, I never thought about selling on eBay, really. At the time it was like, I know people always say now it's like, oh, Etsy's the new eBay, but there was no connection to that when you started at that time. It was very real art and craft and handmade and just so new and exciting,
And when you first started, did you immediately open up your shop selling your hand dyed wool and yarn?
No, I started selling felt bangles because at the time I didn't have the resources, or I didn't even have a spinning wheel at the time. I knew that was sort of the direction I wanted to go in, but I needed to start generating some income to start getting the tools I needed. So, and I had a lot of just like wool bits, from buying at like the Common Ground Fair, and you know, my mom would get me wool sampler packs for Christmas and things like that. And so I had like all these little bits of wool around, and I started, you know, and I was working for Jody at the time, so I was felting a lot and had a lot of ideas generating in my head about what I would do with that. So I started making these felt bangles, and you know, they were $10 a set, and just I think like 3 days after I listed my first bangle, I had a sale, and I sold a little knitting then too.
Yeah.
To get myself going. But I mean, I built this business on $10 felt bangles.
Wow. So
I used to make the envelopes for them using old wallpaper books.
You used to make the envelopes?
I would cut out the envelope from, you know, those wallpaper books that you could get.
No.
You know, from the hardware store where it has all the samples of the wallpaper you could buy.
Yeah. Oh my
I
goodness.
would cut out little envelopes from using all the different wallpaper and make these special packages for the bangles, and
man,
it was fun.
Now, at what point did you decide to end that product line and focus on hand-dyed yarn?
Well, I got my first spinning wheel. My husband bought it for me for Christmas.
Oh.
In, I'm trying to think, the end of 2009.
Okay.
Going into 2010, and it was an antique spinning wheel that I had to kind of piece together. And I started spinning and selling the wool, the dyed wool, for people to make their own things with and felt with. And then I started spinning. And so for about, I don't know, maybe a year I did both. And then it just, the spinning, I got a new spinning wheel, and then it just kind of became all consuming, and I let the bangles go because I started like really just hating felting. I had like felted way too much. And I wasn't working for Jody at this time anymore, but it just, the feeling of the water running down my wrist, the soapy water, like it just was like, I can't do it anymore. I OD'd.
Oh, great. Now, at the time you stopped that line, was there still demand for your felted bangles?
Well, it had started becoming sort of a whole niche on Etsy, and there were a lot of, you know, started being a lot more competition for it, and you know, people started like really pushing it and doing really creative, great things. And, you know, for me, it was kind of, I was done with that part of it. I wasn't generating cool ideas anymore. So it seemed like the right thing to do. Like other people they had gotten cooler than me. Let them do it.
Okay. So it's not like you felt like you were walking away from like a viable income source.
No,
you were ready to move on.
It was always my startup plan.
Okay. So let's talk about when you first opened up your Etsy shop. Did you fully intend for it to be a full-time business that you were running, that you would earn a full-time income from, or did you have other goals in mind?
No, I mean, I went into it wanting that to be, you know, my job, my career.
Okay.
So, I also, you know, a big part of me selling was when I had just had a baby. She was about 6 months old my first daughter, when I opened my Etsy shop, and she was able to come to work with me when I worked at One Lupin. And I was able to work, and she was with me, and it was like that was such an important thing for me, to be able to raise her and to be able to generate income and work from home. And so I think, you know, that aspect always made me really want to make this a viable business.
Okay. So tell us now about your current home family situation. You're a full-time work-at-home mom.
Yes, and I have 3 children. I have Taylor, my oldest, and she's 7.5. Then I have Elliot, who's going to turn 3 in February. And then the newest member that you're listening to here is Parker, and he is 4 months old.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we have a full house.
Yeah, and he's trying to get noticed right now too.
Yeah, if you're on Instagram and you search hashtag Parker don't care, you will see a lot of Parker.
I need to write that down.
Parker's always just kind of getting dragged along, and he's just always in very good spirits.
Oh, good. So then how do you manage your time with, the 3 young ones, and you're at home also running a business? How do you function? I am I'm a bit of a machine. I'm like a real working machine. I like to be doing things all the time. I just look for opportunities and just jump right in. I always have a plan for the week set out, a list of goals. Okay.
You can't do daily goals though, because you never know what's going to happen in the day. So I find weekly goals work really well for me.
Yes.
And just as the moment arises, I jump into some work. And, I've always done it, and it's all my kids have ever known. So that helps. They understand that I work from home, and they've always been very good at, respecting my tools, because we live in we have like 1,000 square foot house. It's not very big. Mm-hmm. And so they respect my tools, and I don't know, they just kind of get it, and we all have a good time. When it's time to put the stuff away, we put it away. And when they're busy, I jump into work. And my husband's extremely helpful and supportive. And when he gets home, he helps me and gives me all the time that he needs. And before I became full-time, I was a bartender and a waitress. So I am used to night hours. So once I get everybody to bed, then I kind of clock in. And I usually work until about 11 o'clock every night.
Okay, guys, that's what I was going to ask, because I know some people like to, like when the kids are awake and active, put everything work related away, and then your work hours start when their day ends.
Yeah. In my dream world, I would do it that way, but being a one woman show, it's like I have to kind of do it on both ends. Like I usually do a lot of my computer work. Like when kids are napping, and I always do my spinning at night. Okay. And dye days, just, whenever the best day comes up, I kind of clear out the kitchen and set up for dye and just do that as much as I can. So, and my mom's available to help me and take the little ones when I really need
you need to
crank some work out.
Now, let's talk about the dye days. Do you, the yarn that you have in your shop and the fiber that you have, do you have them sitting ready to go, or you dye when you get an order?
I make the yarn and then I put it up for sale. So then when you bought it, I just ship it. I do some things made to order, but not a lot. Okay. I do mostly small runs on things. I don't really do repeat colorways. That's not really my thing. I'm a very spontaneous dyer. I like to just, get in, feel the inspiration, do it, and then get it up. So.
Okay. So whatever you have up there, someone has to like it and then want it.
Yeah.
And it's harder I would imagine with dyeing, it's harder to do custom work so easily, especially if someone has a picture in their mind that you can't see.
Yes, that is tricky. The people that I do custom work for have bought a lot of yarn from me. Mm-hmm. And I have, a feel to my work, I think. Mm-hmm. And, they kind of put a lot of trust in me. Like, here's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Do it. You know what I mean? And that's how I collaborate with people. I don't do a ton of custom stuff anymore. Okay. But a lot of times people will be like, "Oh, I liked this. Can you do something like that again?" And that's what I base my work off of.
Would you do custom work for someone who had never bought from you before?
I have, and I've never had a bad experience really. And, there's a lot of communication and a lot of talk that goes back and forth.
Okay.
With custom work. It's, we try and hammer out all those kind of details.
Right.
Before the dye hits the yarn.
Okay.
But you know, things like design seed and stuff helps so much. Like now that's a popular feature, it's like someone will send you a link with all the colors that they're thinking, and it's much easier to like put words to it, since like Pinterest, say, you know, people know how to present the information instead of being like, I want some chartreuse and you know, sky blue.
Right. With just a hint of seafoam.
Yeah, technology made that a lot easier. So that's helpful.
Okay, good. So now you're doing this full time. So obviously your Etsy shop is profitable. What was the trajectory of your Etsy shop? Like how long did it take before you started seeing some profit, and then before it was viable enough that you now make a full-time living on it?
Well, when I first got when I got my like modern good spinning wheel, in about 2010, I had a really good selling flow going, you know, and I got into the yarn and things were looking up and up. And then I took a waitressing job. And then I really kind of got into splitting my time in half between restaurant work and Etsy selling. And so things kind of went downhill from there. And then I took a job managing, the restaurant, which it was all in thinking about being a full-time Etsy seller, because we wanted to buy a house and kind of get our finances squared away. And that meant that I needed a job with a paper trail and, you know, a good income and things like that. So I kind of had to like put that aside, even though I was having great success. And that was hard, but you know, it was like, this is for that reason.
Okay.
So it made it doable. And then when I was pregnant with my second child, I ended up not working at the restaurant anymore. It was kind of a dramatic situation. And then it was like, okay, well, we're going live with this thing. Because it's not like I'm going to go get another restaurant job 7 months pregnant at this point.
Seriously.
So, and we had our house and, you know, I had been selling again. So, I wasnwasn't really having the success that I wanted to be having when I left my job, but
it's Parker.
Yeah, there's Parker cheering me on. But it was just kind of, I knew I could get there again. So the first year was hard, and I spent a lot of time kind of refocusing and rebranding and figuring out how to work at home with 2 kids and
right.
And really trying to generate an income.
Okay.
So
now, what advice would you have to someone who's just starting out? What do you think the better path to take is? Focus full time on growing it in the hopes that maybe your Etsy shop will become successful faster, or do it slowly and while you have some other source of income so that you don't have to go through the stress of work, you know, of that time period when it's not yet profitable?
I don't know. It kind of just depends on who you are as a person. I mean, I definitely work well under pressure. So the starve or sell mentality, you know, definitely motivates you. It was always in my head that this is what I wanted and this is what I was going to do. So I think that's what I would recommend. You know, if you want to do it, just commit to that's what you're doing and make it happen. We did a lot of work to get our finances right. Like we have, you know, it's not a very big house, but it's perfectly fine for what we need, and it's very comfortable and doesn't need a lot of repairs, and the mortgage is very low. We got it at a very good price. So, you know, those types of things are important.
Yes.
You know, to set up. We keep it pretty simple, you know, we don't have brand new cars and you know, we live a pretty simple but happy life. You know, what our expectations are, fit in with my goal as being a full-time Etsy seller. And I think that that's something really important to keep track of.
Okay. I like that. And actually, this is now going to be a completely random question. Not really random for you, but for anyone listening. So Rachel has chickens. Do you buy your own eggs or do you rely on your chickens for your eggs?
I rely on my chickens for my eggs. Sometimes in the winter, we buy a little more here and there because in the winter they lay less consistently.
Okay.
Food sources and it's cold and there's little stress on them.
Yeah.
But I know that has chickens and they have extra eggs. Okay. But I haven't bought eggs at a grocery store in a long time.
Yeah. Was that the whole goal with the chickens?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And, they're really funny, interesting little creatures.
Yeah, I know. I thought, and, I'm sorry for anyone who thinks this is going off topic, but I liked that because one of my sisters, they're doing the whole partial homesteading thing. I don't know if you could call it full-blown homesteading, but they have a chicken coop with chickens and they have 4 chickens and it's a thing and it's interesting and they get
I think it's a big part of simple living and kind of making do for yourself as much as you can.
As much as you can, yes.
Actually, at one point we had goats.
I love goats.
On our 0.3 acres, we had 2 Nigerian dwarf goats that
Nigerian.
I would milk them and Nigerian dwarf goats, fantastic. I'll have you know.
I know. Those are the goats I love. I grew up. My grandmother used to raise exactly those goats. She was a goat farmer.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Goats are they're funny. They are funny, special little creatures.
They are.
We had this little pen out back for them, and my husband would build like ramps and all these like entertaining things for them. And there was a ramp that went up their goat pen, and they would sit on the roof and sun, and it was great. But it wasn't an ideal situation. They needed a little more land, so they went to a goat farm.
Oh,
a couple hours away from here.
Yeah.
And they're living a very happy life, but we loved having them.
Yeah, goats are good pets. If you have the space for goats are nice pets.
And the milk is fantastic.
I didn't drink the milk.
Oh, we did. I would make yogurt and cheese and it was great.
Yeah, see, the reason we didn't really do goat milk was because, in Nigeria, the electricity wasn't always constant. So it was not always ideal. You couldn't keep it if you don't drink it there and then you have to toss it. So
and goat's milk can get funky.
Mm-hmm.
Like you really want to drink it like a couple days after you milk it.
Yeah,
because it starts to get that very farm.
Yes.
Farmy flavor.
And that ends the animal husbandry portion of this podcast. All right. So let's talk about other shops on Etsy. Do you look at other shops that sell hand-dyed yarn and wools, or you pretty much just mind your own business?
The fiber artists have a pretty tight community. Everybody's kind of all of each other's business. And I mean that in a good way.
Okay, good.
I buy yarn from other yarn dyers all the time. My latest skein was from the Flying Kettle. Yesterday Dream I've gotten yarn from. FO and Dye, Spun Right Round. I mean, I love buying other people's yarn. I don't like stock out other sellers in terms of like comparing my own work.
Okay.
Because I'm just, I've been doing it long enough that I'm comfortable with what I do and I know what, my feel is and I just stick with that. But I love other people's work.
Okay.
So yes and no.
Were all those Etsy shops that you listed?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, nice. Well, good to know. Now, let's talk about how you promote your Etsy shop. What do you do to get people to come and buy from you?
Well, because of the time that I got started, it was when Twitter was really just first kind of starting up. So I've always been on Twitter and I have a pretty good following there. I have a Facebook fan page, which I don't have a huge following there, but I have a very loyal following. And, you know, the people that like my page are active users. And I then started an Instagram account. That's like all the rage now. And I love it.
Okay.
Because I like sharing my working process. And that's like the best way to do it.
And pictures of Parker.
Yes, and pictures of Parker. Well, all the kids. That's definitely a part of my feed. And through that, I started a Tumblr blog called Making Yarn. And that's where I share just my making yarn pictures. No kid stuff, no, you know, dinner plates, anything like that. It's just yarn. And I've always had a Flickr account. So I'm pretty much anywhere you could be.
You are.
On the internet. And because I've been doing it so long, there's so much content in all those places.
Okay.
So that always helps in terms of making my brand well known. And, you know, I think I really feel like I generate 80% of my Etsy sales versus like Etsy search, say. Because of all my posting and guerrilla marketing.
Wow. Really?
Yes.
From where specifically does most of your traffic come from to your Etsy store?
It's hard to say. I mean, okay. I definitely get a lot from Instagram.
Okay.
But when I say that, I don't say, here's some yarn, it's for sale, buy it from me. I think a lot of people are starting to think, oh, well, I'm selling on Instagram now. Well, when you're on Instagram, you shouldn't really like be selling. You're just telling a story through pictures.
Yeah, thank you.
And then that drives people to look for you in other places like your Etsy shop or things like that. But, you know, and also on Facebook, I always update, you know, a few times a day. I keep people in the know of what I'm working on, you know, sharing a lot of pictures and, you know, it's like, make sure people know I'm having a dye day. Today I'm working on spontaneous sock yarn. You know, I've been trying to be consistent with my updates, usually Friday at 4. So like just before our conversation started, I activated a bunch of listings that I had been adding all week. And those went live Friday at 4. So people start to get used to that, you know. Well, I know she'll have new stuff. I'll go check it out.
Okay. Now, sorry, go on.
No, that was my thought.
Okay. Now, how is your Tumblr? So you have a Tumblr blog, but then you also have another website on theround.com.
Yes, which is probably the most neglected.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's because of my lifestyle with all the kids. It's easy to just feed those quick little bites of information, whereas kind of sitting down and typing things up and editing and organizing the pictures are harder for me. So when important things are going on, then I try and write a blog post, and that's one of my goals for this year, to be better about that. But
Okay. I was curious about that.
Yes, so, I do have a blog, and usually active shop information is on there. So
okay. So with Tumblr, all you really do is post the picture and say something about it.
Yeah, pretty much my Tumblr blog is a direct link to Instagram. It's just I only show the pictures that are relevant to making yarn.
Okay. Now, you also do craft fairs.
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about that. How much of your promotion of your business would you say craft fairs is?
It's hard to say now at this point, because so many people I think I've kind of roped into my circle through doing shows, you know, and then they become Facebook followers, and then, you know, just loyal customers, you know, or they meet me at shows and they learn about my brand, and from there I direct them to follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter.
Okay.
Here's my shop. So it's kind of hard to say. It's very muddled at this point. I've been doing shows since 2010, so.
Okay. Now, how many shows do you do a year?
Well, since having Parker, I had to back off. I did 2 last year.
Okay.
when I was quite pregnant. I did one in June, and then I did... What else did I do? Oh, I did one in December when I had him. Okay. There's a show in Maine called Picnic, and they do a summer show in August. And that's when I started with them, which I think it was in 2010. And then they started doing a holiday show, and it's in Portland, Maine, which is kind of like our big city. Mm-hmm. And it's a very cool show. It's an indie craft fair. You know, it's very hip, and they have DJs and just really incredible sellers, and it's a thing. You know, you can get food and coffee and buy all these great, amazing things. And so it's a really fun event. And the summer one is in a park, and they have bands, and, you know, it's just this really fun, you know, kind of the way that craft shows have turned to become these like hip shows. Right. Picnic is very much that, and it's a great and successful show for me. So I always do that show. Okay. I've done it pregnant. I've done it with a baby strapped to me. I've done it.
They've seen you every which way at Picnic.
Yes,
huh?
I always do it. It's super fun. So, and then the other show I did this past year was in June, which is the Maine Fiber Frolic. And so I'm lucky in my niche to have fiber shows, which are specifically geared towards knitters and spinners and felters and people who work with, you know, wool weavers.
Okay.
So I do that show always. Same. I've done that pregnant with baby strapped to me, and it's just really fun. Great show. But previous to this past year, I think I did 12 shows one year. I did anything that was within driving distance.
So yeah, I was going to ask about that. Do you stay strictly in Maine, or do you go outside of Maine and do some shows?
I did a show in Salisbury, Mass, the Vintage Bazaar, which was a great show. And that was a travel show for me. That was the only travel show that I've done outside of Maine. And it was great. But it's definitely, for me with my kids, it's hard for me to get away for that length of time. And shows really are super exhausting anyway. So to add the travel time and either having to bring a child with me or be away from my children, it just was hard. But I think once they get older, I'll go back to doing more shows in New England. Okay. 'Cause it's fun, you know, like when I did that show, the Vintage Bazaar, Matterroot is another Etsy seller, and we got a cottage on the beach together. And nice. Yeah, and it was really fun. And we, you know, after the show, we went home and grilled and walked on the beach and then went back to it. And so it's fun. There's a great community with doing shows, and you get to know other vendors and make friends. And that's such a fun part of it. So
yeah, all business trips should be that way.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk a bit more about craft shows, because you're very experienced doing craft shows. So for the person who hasn't done any, where does one begin? There are different types of craft shows, I understand. What are the options out there?
Well, there's kind of different tiers is I think probably the best way to explain it. There's, you know, holiday shows at like the local high school or Elks Club or something like that. Table shows versus an outdoor tent show is probably the best place to start, just to kind of get a feel, see if you like it. I mean, I think sometimes, a lot of times, people who make things or sell online, it's, you know, they're not as comfortable with people and selling. So it's important to maybe start small and figure out if you're okay with that. Right. And, you know, you want to put yourself out there in that way. So that's always a good place to start. There's juried shows, which that means there's like a panel and you send in pictures and, you know, a blurb about what you sell and your price points. And then the jury reviews you and you get chosen to be in the show or not. So that's something to consider if you can take that kind of, you know, rejection if you don't get in. The nice thing, I mean, you should, I'm telling you, you should do that. But, you know, if you're if you're not ready for it, don't apply yet, just in case.
Now, what do these juries look for?
So juries look for really clear, nice pictures, professional looking pictures, good image file size. They're looking for complete shots and that you have, a cohesive look and feel to your products. They like a good price range. You don't want to have like 3 items and they're all $500.
Right.
That's not, a good price point is important when you're doing a show because they want people to come and spend money at the show they're putting together.
Yeah.
I think having like your policies and your introduction and just, having a clean, well-presented shop is definitely good. And I know that they like having a clear web presence because that means you're going to help generate customers for the show.
Okay.
That's a big part of these shows is getting people to come to them. And, it's more than printing a flyer now. It's so much with the social media and marketing. So I think that really helps when you have a clear presence.
Okay.
And you're going to be sending people.
Are juried shows, do they tend to be more expensive than the non-juried?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I don't know. I think sometimes a new show will start and they're asking a lot of money. And I think sometimes it's like, oh, well, if it's expensive, it must be good. And that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
I think anywhere from $25 to $200 I've paid to do a show. And when I first started out, I wouldn't have signed up for a $200 show.
Right.
Because I didn't know what I would make. So once I kind of figured out what I can make at a show, then you start to factor in what you can spend on the show, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I would say probably you should expect to really spend about $50 to $75.
Okay. And that's reasonable?
Yeah, it's definitely reasonable.
Okay.
A lot of times table shows, which I would encourage you, if you're new to doing craft shows, I would look for doing a table show versus a tent show. And usually table shows are more reasonably priced because your entire real estate at the show is a table.
Okay.
Versus you have to bring a tent and you have a lot more.
Okay,
square foot.
Wait. Okay, so a table show, you bring your own table, you just lay out your goods.
Yeah, a lot of times you don't even have to bring your own table, which is nice if you're just getting started. Like the Picnic Holiday Show, for example, is an inside show, and you have an 8-foot table, and that's it. That's what you got. You've got to put all your product on that one table. Whereas the Picnic Arts and Music Festival in the summer, that's a tent show. So I have to bring a tent. One of those easy up tents. Mm-hmm. And I fill that however I want to. But it takes a lot more stuff to fill a tent than it does a table. So that's one of the reasons I recommend starting with a table show. Because you can...
Now, must you fill up your tent?
You don't have to, but I think it presents itself better and It's easier for people to shop if you have a fair amount of product,
Okay.
Because you can only make so much money in terms of what you bring. If you don't bring that much, you can't make that much. So.
Okay. Now,
important factor.
Can juried craft shows be tent or table, or do they have to be one or the other, or can they be either?
It could be either.
Okay.
It just depends. Like mostly summer shows are tent shows and mostly winter shows and holiday shows are table shows.
Okay.
I mean, depending where you live, of course, but in Maine, that's pretty true. Okay. We don't have tent shows in the middle of winter.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what other types of craft shows are out there that people can look into participating in? Well,
I mean, you could do farmers markets.
Yes. Oh, I love those.
You could do, that's more of a time commitment in terms of like, usually you have to sign up for the season of the farmers market. So like, every Thursday from June to October or however long that runs.
If you're in California, that's like forever.
Right.
I think
right.
farmers markets
so you
never
have
stop.
to have a weekly, for me, for example, I don't really do that because like with the hand spun, for example, it would be really hard for me to replenish in a week's time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to consider. Then there's also, you could do trunk shows, which I've done before, which are really fun. Like at a yarn shop, for example, I go and I bring my work and set up a table in the yarn store, and they tell their customers, Rachel from On the Round is going to be here on this day, and they make it kind of an event, and
So
that's always a fun thing to do, and it's low key,
And that's would that be kind of like having a pop-up shop?
Yeah, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, but with less pressure because you just have to fill a table.
Right. And is it
so all that really takes is just the guts to go to the vendor and say, hey, do you want to do this? I've done it in coffee shops before. I've done it in yarn stores. It's fun. And it's a good way to build a local presence also.
Okay. Have you had success with that? As in, do people buy on the spot, or do you find you tend to end up sending them to your website or your Etsy shop?
No, I get people that buy on the spot for sure. And then they come back later. Yeah, definitely. And I've had people, who have bought from me locally or have bought my yarn from the local yarn store reach out to me and then, come and pick up yarn, or I deliver it to them, so it started a relationship of yarn loving.
Yeah. Nice. So, where else would you recommend people sell their handmade goods in addition to craft fairs and farmers market trunk shows, just so that they're not stuck online? Because I know it's important to actually be present physically in some places sometimes, just to expand your market base.
Yeah, I mean, I think that selling online in person versus online, I think really helps you get a feel for your product and how people are interacting with it. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely, I think it's really important at some point to try. When I did the bangles, I did a little consignment, but I didn't love it, and I didn't have great experiences with it. So I'm not a huge pusher of consignment. Okay. I think it's a better deal for the shop than it might be for the maker.
Okay.
And so consignment is when you send your product and it's 40/60. So they take 40% and you don't get paid until they sell it.
Okay. Who sets the price?
Right. You set the price.
Okay.
Well, ideally you set the price, but when they get it, they could sell it for more and you don't know it. I doubt they sell it for less because you were expecting to make X amount of money on the product, but you're also at the mercy of the person handling the product. And so for example, if it doesn't sell, you get a bunch of shop worn product back, if you even get it back. Or in my case, a shop closed and I just never got my stuff back. And I've heard some horror stories of that happening to other people. So
wait, so then you're just out your product?
Yeah, you just never get it back.
I wonder where it ends
up. I tried to get a hold of these people for months and it just never.
Oh.
I mean, at some point, you either just let it go or you fight harder. I'm not sure. I just decided to let it go.
Just let it go.
But it's very frustrating. So for me, that was never part of my selling model. I prefer to sell retail on my own. And that's why I like doing shows and why I push a lot of traffic to my own Etsy shop. So I prefer not to be dependent on other people to sell my things.
Okay. Now, what about vendor shows? Because those are slightly different from craft shows, right?
Sort of. Yeah, I mean, essentially, it depends. It's a fine line because, like a vendor show, they might be, it's all about the wording, I think, of the show.
Okay.
Because sometimes when you say craft show, what comes to people's mind is sort of like kitschy, homemade, obviously homemade things.
Mm-hmm.
But when you say vendor or juried show, then it feels like a real product. So it just kind of depends on the way that the show is spinning it.
Okay. So sometimes it can just be a semantic difference, not really an essential difference.
So a lot of it has to do with how you envision your own products and where you see yourself fitting in. Like I tend to do really well at like gift shows, for example, because yarn is a great gift and everybody knows a knitter and, price point plays a big factor, but I'm not going to do like a really like we have some shows, in Midcoast, Maine that are really like, they tote being really high end and it's like gold jewelry and, really big furniture pieces and things like that. And I'm not going to do that kind of show, but I also can't do like high school craft shows because, my skeins of yarn are over, between $30 and $40 each. So to some degree of a show, somebody's going to come up and be like, this is offensive how much money you're asking for this yarn. I've done that kind of show and it's like, oh my God, this is a horrible experience, where you're like repelling people. So, but, that's why I think it's important to just try some different spots and get an idea of where you and your product fit in.
Okay.
I do really well at the like hip, new wave.
Yeah.
Craft shows. Anything that's saying not your grandma's craft show, I'm going to do pretty well at. That seems to be kind of a common tagline.
Oh, nice. Now, where do you find craft shows to participate in? Is there some repository website where you can go and see what shows will be coming up?
Yeah, there are some. I've never found very many of them helpful.
Okay.
It's just sort of like a word of mouth thing. It's one of those things that you have to kind of develop a network with, like I'm really lucky to be on an Etsy team, the Etsy Maine team.
Mm-hmm.
And, we talk about that kind of thing. Like there's a show this weekend. Who's doing this? Mm-hmm. Applications for this show just came up. Mm-hmm. Is anyone going to apply? It can be kind of hard when you get started to find shows.
Yeah.
Unless you know specifically what the show is called.
Right.
So I find relying on your team, if you have a local team, join it. If you know other sellers in your area, you can use the Etsy search filter and find people close to you. Start making connections with them and talking with them, Yeah. I have my friend Karen of Pipsqueak Bags. She's an Etsy seller and a good friend of mine, and lives a couple towns over, and we talk almost daily, and it's like, oh, did you see this? And I'm going to apply for this. We kind of cheer each other on, and that really helps, and those relationships really are important, I think.
Yes.
For the success of your shop, if you want to do it full time, and has always been helpful in terms of craft shows. It's also good to be like, hey Karen, I'm doing this show and, I'm doing it alone. Could you come at lunchtime and hang out with me so I can eat? And, those kind of things are, it's nice. It's important.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because I know I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area and there's the San Francisco Etsy team, the SF Etsy team, and they actually set up their own craft fairs, cool. For the team members, and it's a very active team and it's very dynamic. I think they're doing just a wonderful job.
Yeah.
And they have multiple in the per year. I haven't quite figured out what the schedule is, but they have more than one going on. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's good to like you said, connect with your local Etsy teams and see if anything is going on. That's a good resource.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, a group of people on the Etsy Maine team have this craft posse, and they all meet up and get together. And they actually started a holiday show that they invited me to. That's right. I forgot I even did this one. I did one like a week's notice. They were like, "Oh, we don't have any yarn. Rachel, do you want to come sell?" And the show was called Roost, and it was the next town over. And it was like, well, how can I say no to that?
Of course.
Yeah. So it was awesome. And it was a great show. It was the first year. So sometimes when a show is new, obviously it takes a little bit to get off the ground, and you have to recognize that. But like this has such potential to be such an amazing show. So I was like so excited to be a part of it and can't wait to do it again next year. And so definitely those connections are great and really important.
Yeah. Now, do you find that some shows just fizzle away? Because they just
that hasn't
don't do
happened
well?
to me so much. But I haven't really been doing it long enough. I mean, I'm sure that happens. Well, I know that happened with the Bizarre Bazaar shows. They were kind of a big show.
The what?
I think in the Boston. It was called the Bizarre Bazaar.
Oh, Bizarre Bazaar. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure it was in like Boston. It wasn't a show I did, but that one I'm pretty sure fizzled out.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the first like hipster craft show. They like started the cool craft show movement.
Okay.
So I'm sure at some point I will experience that.
Okay.
But hopefully not my beloved picnic show ever.
Now, with all the craft shows that you do you also sell? So is your only online presence for selling on Etsy, or do you have an e-commerce website?
I'm actually building an e-commerce website right now, which
Okay.
will work in conjunction with Etsy. It's a little trickier for me because my products are one of a kind. I think if you have a product that you recreate and, you have one listing and you're able to relist it and resell it over and over again, you should definitely have an e-commerce site.
Okay.
But
Is this a
we'll
site
see
that
how
you're,
that plays out.
sorry, is this a site that you're building on your own?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's even just one more thing you're doing.
Yes.
Like you need any
See,
more.
I'm like a machine. That's what I do.
Yes. Do you sometimes find that you get in a creative rut, and how do you get yourself out?
Yes, I do get in creative ruts, and I have kind of a little system to fix that because I kind of have systems for everything. So I do like a theme week. I was in a real creative rut in the spring, and this past spring, and I was pregnant with Parker and was like, I basically slept through January, February, and March. Like I was just so tired and just was like, I am so pooped and uninspired. And I always do a de-stash sale in April. That's where I sell off old inventory, and I do that off my Facebook page. So it's an auction.
Oh.
And it's super fun. My customers love it. It helps build a big Facebook following. But so I do my de-stash sale, and I kind of cleaned out old stuff and fibers that I wasn't using or things that had been sitting for too long I hadn't touched. So I kind of cleared my palette and got some new supplies. And then I did a rainbow week where I just made rainbows all week. I spun rainbow yarn. I made rainbow bats. I found rainbow everything and created rainbow Pinterest boards and found other sellers' products that are related to knitting and yarn that were rainbow. And I posted them on my Facebook page and on Twitter. And it just was like this whole all-consuming thing. And I created a hashtag for it. It was #RainbowWeek. And I just had the freedom to make whatever, it's like whatever idea that came to my head about rainbows, I made it. And it was so fun. And I got so many followers that week and created so many great images and came up with some great new products that really, my rainbow tweed handspun is one of my best sellers now. And I sell that in handspun and in bat form for other people to spin. So, I came up with great products, got new followers, and just got so inspired and got a good marketing flow. And so that's kind of what I do now. I try and, if I'm kind of dragging on something, I come up with a theme and I just like explore it from every angle.
Nice.
And that really gets me zhuzhed up again.
Zhuzhed up. Is there something that you'll say that you're specifically doing that's working really well for you, selling on Etsy?
Yes, I include people in the making process. And I think that was where things really started turning once I went full time, and sales started coming easier. I felt more comfortable. I found my niche. And that was when I really started sharing my making process with my audience. And just sort of including people, because making hand spun yarn there's a lot of steps and it's a slow process. So kind of showing people and bringing them into my world every step of the way, creates another aspect of the business. It's not just yarn, it becomes, a part, an experience. So that really helped my success for sure.
Nice.
I think that's something people think about when they think about On the Round yarn.
Is being a part of it.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, what advice would you give to an Etsy seller who is just kind of right now struggling with their identity on Etsy and not really making the sales that they want to, and not just, they need to know what the next step is? What would you say to that seller?
Well, for me, Instagram was such a big part of that. I would really recommend starting some sort of, attaching yourself to some sort of storytelling option. I don't know. Like, that's what it was for me. It was like, I just started telling my story on Instagram through pictures, and you were able to get an immediate response. It was like you could tell by how many hearts and likes and comments what people liked. And that helped me figure out my look and what people wanted to see and what products people really loved and, maybe what wasn't great.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I guess just keep trying things, just keep tweaking things. I think a lot of times people just kind of get settled and this is how I'm doing it and I'm going to make it work. And, if it's not working, you have to say, this isn't working. And
yes, I like that.
Try something else. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like the fact that you really communicate with your audience and you integrate feedback from them into your products, because then at least
if you listen to them, they'll steer you in the right direction.
Yeah, good. Now, Rachel, what's the best way people can reach you if they want to get in touch with you?
Well, you can email me. I have my own email server. It's rachel@ontheround.com. But I communicate with people through Etsy. I communicate on my Facebook page, through Instagram. It's harder to get a hold of me through Flickr or Tumblr because I don't check in there as regularly.
Okay.
So those will probably be the best methods. But I try and respond to combos, in a timely manner, and always on Facebook.
All right. And I'm going to have links to all of Rachel's contact information and all her social media accounts. So if you don't remember any of that, just go to convome.com, look for On the Round, and you'll see all the ways you can get in touch with Rachel. Rachel, thank you so much for sharing everything you did about your Etsy journey and about craft fairs. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure this will be educational for other people who listen. So thank you so much for being my guest.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Oh, thanks. You're welcome. And I will be back next week. Oh, and thanks to Parker, too. I forgot.
He's asleep now.
Oh, okay. Well, there. All right. I'll be back next week.
Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the podcast in iTunes, and while you're there, please leave a review, too. Visit convome.com to leave a comment or feedback on this episode.